This will likely be one of the most important videos I ever make. If you're an entrepreneur, an investor, an engineer, a techno-optimist, or anybody who is future-facing and you believe that technology is a necessary good for the future of humanity and for the expansion of civilization and to increase the potential of the future light cone, this video is for you. Put away Twitter, listen up. Over the past few years, I've been trying to answer very fundamental questions of where are we heading as a society, where are we heading as a species, and how can we maximize the probability of the greatest outcome possible? How can we accelerate the timeline of technology? How can we become a multiplanetary species and become eventually a type 2 civilization and eventually a type 3 civilization, even though we're not even type 1 yet? These are ideas that are always occupying my mind, and they never give me mental space for anything else. This message and video serves as a bridge for the transmutation of these ideas into the physical world. None of these ideas are completely finished or refined, but they are directionally correct. From all of my searching, I think these are the least wrong ideas out of any of the ideas I've heard thus far. With the current rate of technological advancement, I do believe you can only extrapolate so far into the future. But nonetheless, I think the best thing we can do is build a solid foundation and a few fundamental guiding principles that maximize the probability of everybody being in the best position in the future if they commit to these ideas. I should caveat this by saying there are ideas in here that you can apply at an individual level, but there's also ideas that you need a community to apply correctly. You'll need a collection of individuals that have built a society from the first principles upwards to execute and commit to these ideas in their fullest potential. And if done correctly, I think you could see probably the most accelerated expansion and growth and the highest levels of prosperity any person or any living organism on this side of the Milky Way has ever seen. The foundations of some of these ideas have been inspired by people like Balaji or Guillaume Verdon and many other people within the realms of philosophy, economics, physics, and I've tried my best to work up from the very first principles of certain physical phenomena. Most specifically, one of the things I try to look at whenever learning about ourselves and the rules that we should be playing by is thermodynamics or computational biology or evolutionary biology or evolutionary psychology in general. While yes, the technological future is very unpredictable, I do think we will still continue to be human in some way, shape, or form. It would be very unwise for us to uproot 4 billion years of evolution, 4 billion years of biological mechanisms and programming that has served us thus far. For 4 billion years, it has kept us alive. I don't see a reason why we would uproot that in the near future. If we do, maybe we don't, I don't know. But the best thing I can do right now is use that as one of the fundamental guiding principles, which is why I mentioned it just a second ago. As long as we do continue to be human, there is a certain amount of predictability that we'll have for the foreseeable future. So logically, the best thing we can do now is maximize leverage, index into the correct resources, align incentives with what the future rules of the game will be, not what they are today, because we know they're changing. Why not we align incentives sooner than later to have first mover advantage? And that's what we're going to be talking about in this video. I want to make it very clear that the purpose of this video is for you as the individual to receive the maximum amount of value possible as an individual. The best way for you to ensure that is to remove the distractions now, put away Twitter, stop watching the cat video, and actually exercise your goldfish-sized attention span for once. Jokes aside, if you don't know me, my name is Neil McDevitt. I attended the Darla-Moore School of Business where I studied economics. Fortunately, I dropped out soon after to start my entrepreneurial journey where I was building a marketing agency from the age of 19 to 22, and then eventually I decided to sell all of the secrets that I built from building my marketing agency. Up until this point, my entire goal in life was to become a capital allocator and to build a company that I could replace myself and hire a CEO and become a chairman of a few different companies. If you know Andrew Wilkinson and Tiny, that was kind of the model I was chasing at the time, or something like a Constellation software model was also within the realm of possibility at the time. I was still quite early in my journey, obviously. Nonetheless, I saw this thing called artificial intelligence growing rapidly, and I uprooted every single thing that I was doing at the time because I realized that everything that I was doing was going to be fundamentally replaced, which led me to a new obsession of fully immersing myself into the black hole of artificial intelligence, understanding the potential implications of this technology by studying certain realms of theoretical physics and what the implications could be there, or understanding the certain aspects of what is this technology intrinsically, how does it actually operate whenever it is extrapolated to its final form, whenever we do hit some form of AGI, what does that actually look like, what does that mean, and what does it mean for all of the adjacent things to it, which everything is adjacent to it. Fortunately, I've already had a pretty solid world model from studying just a lot of the greats in the previous times, such as Benjamin Franklin, Friedrich Nietzsche, or whether it's just like Charlie Munger or Warren Buffett. Studying all of the greats has been one of the best things I have ever done in my life. Like Charlie Munger said, make friends with the imminent dead. Nonetheless, when artificial intelligence was implemented into my world model, it completely broke it for a temporary period of time, and I've had to reassemble it from the fundamentals upwards. I have had to go through like an ego death and reassemble every single thing I once thought was going to be my future, and find a new path forward, reassemble everything from the very first principles, and actually understand where are we heading, and find a few fundamental guiding principles to help me with that, which is what leads me to this video, which is why I think it's very valuable for you to pay very close attention. Whether you spend a lot of time obsessing over this technology and studying the very upper edges of it, just like I do, or you're somebody who is just learning, I think both people can receive value from this video because I've tried to compress everything into the most digestible form possible, and I've asked myself the very hard questions and tried to develop some fundamental frameworks that we can use again as guiding principles going into the future. So again, at the beginning of this presentation, we're going to be diving into the very first principles, laying out the foundation, and we'll work up from there. So bear with me, stick through it. You're going to be very happy that you did. And as we go through this presentation, it'll start to build on top of each other, and you will be able to take actionable steps that you can take away with right after you watch this video. With that being said, I think that's enough yapping. Let's get to the actual video. Just to reiterate one last time, this is not intended to predict the future. We're simply identifying some fundamental guiding principles, trying our best to identify what the rules of the game will be in the near future, and trying to incentivize ourselves and the people around us with those rules so that we can have first mover advantage and be in the best position possible when that future gets here. Similar to how the founding fathers identified some fundamental guiding principles in the inception of America, that's kind of what we're trying to do here, so that we can play by the correct rules and be in the correct position, or the least wrong, the optimal position for the future. That being said, if we can accurately and effectively do that, that is the only thing that matters. As long as all of physics doesn't break and we continue in some way, shape, or form to be somewhat of a human, I think we have a pretty good solution here. One thing I think we can all agree on is the main goal should be to maximize the potential for the future light cone, maximize flourishing for humanity, and the best way to do that is to accelerate technology and increase the pace at which the economy grows. Really, we just want to maximize the potential for all of the observers within the universe, and this includes expanding our personal reach, increasing the probability of positive outcomes, focusing on long-term impacts, and increasing the human experience. Tearing everything down to the very first principles and working up from there, let's talk about out of equilibrium thermodynamics, evolutionary biology, and how these two things apply to what we're going to be talking about in this video. So you can reduce all of matter, including yourself, down to energy and information. There is nothing else. And throughout the inception of the universe until present day, energy and entropy have had this elegant dance where we have gone to greater and greater levels of interesting phenomena that arises from very simple initial conditions. As you can see in the picture on the right hand side here, we have a very simple initial condition, which in this case is literally just a dot. And it is almost like an intelligent process where it's always trying to discover and optimize the best way to maximize the ability for it to keep growing and flourishing. This is actually an example from biology of like a genotype, for example, where it's maximizing the probability of being selected for via natural selection. As you can see, as it goes towards the right here, it hits certain plateaus and then it has to create new branches. meaning that it's optimizing for the fitness function. This is kind of how like the Neanderthals have gone extinct because either their intelligence wasn't great enough or their genetics weren't energy efficient enough or good enough to actually survive. They weren't competitive enough to last in the universe as a species. So you can look at competitiveness as a species as energy efficiency and effectiveness on all scales. So all the way down to the molecular scale, all the way up to the mesoscales of even like intelligence as an evolved biological mechanism. The organism, the genes that maximize energy efficiency and effectiveness on all scales the best have the greatest chance of survival. If you look at how energy and entropy have this elegant dance, entropy is the force of nature that makes systems that maximize energy efficiency prevail. The reason we, as organisms, have prevailed is because we are more energy efficient. We are theoretically the most energy efficient organism that has gone thus far. That's why we have survived this long. So really, the main lesson that we should take from thermodynamics and evolutionary biology is the organism that maximizes energy efficiency and effectiveness on all scales the best is the one that prevails, whether that's at a gene level or whether that's at an intelligence level. Because the reason we as intelligent beings have evolved intelligence is so that we can create different technologies or so that we can harness and leverage energy on all scales. Whichever organism has the greatest levels of intelligence can maximize energy efficiency and effectiveness on all scales the best, making them a higher level of evolution. Now, we can apply this exact ideology from thermodynamics to other processes that we operate in on the mesoscale as well. So pivoting from there, let's apply those types of frameworks to civilization. But first, we must identify the 4 fundamental inputs that lead to outputs as of civilizational growth. So there's energy, materials, intelligence, and labor. These are the only 4 absolutely most fundamental inputs that lead to the outputs such as civilizational growth. Some people will say that, well, no, you're missing the most important one. The most important one is narratives. I do think narratives are important, but the quality of narratives is attached to the quality of intelligence. So therefore, narratives are emergent from intelligence. So intelligence is actually the more fundamental input. The greater the intelligence, the more improved narratives, the more improved the civilization will become. So these are literally the only 4 fundamental constraints, the fundamental components to building a civilization. However, for the first time ever, we are entering a paradigm where intelligence and labor are no longer needed by humans for economic growth. Because with artificial intelligence, we are able to manufacture intelligence and labor at any scale or velocity we want to. And usually we are bottlenecked by the process of procreation of humans. We have to procreate and then raise this being for 20 years and educate this being. And by the time he is 20 or she is 20, they will eventually be good enough to allocate their intelligence and labor to the economy. Now we have the ability to compress those time frames drastically. So what does this mean? Well, for one, we could easily see an economic singularity. Currently, the economy doubles about every 18 years. Economists like Robin Hanson say it's very plausible that we could see the economy start to double every month because there really is no upper bound to the amount of intelligence and labor that we deploy to scale the economy besides energy and materials that allow those things to come to fruition. Number 2, our current economic paradigm will break because of this. Currently, the US dollar is a distilled storage or a distilled version of human capital. Whenever you are paid as a person, they're paying for your labor. Or whenever you pay for somebody else, you are paying for labor and their intelligence. So trading US dollars is literally trading the time, effort, and intelligence and labor of humans. But when humans are dislocated from the economy because they are the least efficient and effective at driving it, because we now have technology that outperforms them in every single category, what is the fundamental unit of economics at this point? What is the fundamental unit that drives the economy forward? It'll no longer be US dollars, because US dollars are what we use to incentivize human growth. It will be something fundamentally different. If you look at what powers technology, well, for one, materials are something that we use to build the technology, but the thing that actually powers it is energy itself. So the fundamental unit of economics is most likely going to be energy, because if we look at how compute is scaling, compute is approaching the upper limits of the energy that we have. And if we want the entire economy to keep scaling, the entire economy will always be at the upper limits of the energy that we can capture and deploy as a civilization if we're growing the economy in the best way possible. So really what you should be taking away from this slide is that energy and electricity, or kilowatt hours, makes a far better source of a unit of economics than US dollars in the future. This leads us to Kardashev economics. So what is Kardashev economics? It is built off the idea that the universe tells us the rules to play. We already covered the first slide of thermodynamics and evolutionary biology, and how the organism or the system that maximizes energy efficiency and effectiveness the best prevails. The same thing happens within the current paradigm of capitalism. If you look at capitalism, we are basically a mirror of the universe. That's why capitalism works far better than communism. Communism has always failed because it's a bloated system. It doesn't maximize energy efficiency or effectiveness on all scales. It does the exact opposite. But capitalism is basically the universe itself. It's a mirror of the universe, where you have free markets where energy can travel freely by deploying capital itself. US dollars almost act like energy in the free markets. And the companies that lack the ability to maximize energy efficiency and effectiveness on all scales and produce the best products would be the best outcomes of that energy. The companies that lack that ability are the companies that are selected out by natural selection, which is why capitalism has been a fantastic experiment, a fantastic way for us to grow. But the thesis here is, what if we go one step further? Instead of just having capitalism, what if we use the actual thing itself, being energy, instead of US dollars, which we're kind of somewhat parallel with the roles that the universe tells us to play? What if we close that gap and use the fundamental thing, energy? What if we use that itself instead of this abstract version called capital that is really just arbitrarily there? What if we tokenize energy on the blockchain and trade energy units and barter with energy units and build with energy units? What do those incentives lead to is the question. So Kardashev economics combines the current free markets of capitalism with the idea that kilowatt hours is a better alternative to US dollars as the fundamental unit of economics, as we explained on the previous slides. In free markets today, capital is used as a mechanism to create value by buying the intelligence and labor of other humans. But again, when robots outpace humans at intelligence and labor, we're going to not give them US dollars, because that wouldn't make sense. They're powered by energy fundamentally. So it is only logical that energy becomes the fundamental unit of economics. And this type of economic paradigm actually gives very interesting styles of living. Certain people could have like agrarian styles of living, where they have their energy capturing technology and they're basically farming money, kind of like the agrarian style living before the Industrial Revolution. There were lots of farmers where they were farming basically energy in the form of food or other sorts of products like cotton, and then that was transformed into different products via capital. Now we can have a similar dynamic of agrarian style living, or even the current capitalistic style living that we have today, where companies can come in here and then, instead of using US dollars on their profit and loss statement, they use energy credits on their profit and loss statement. And that is how they maximize energy efficiency and effectiveness on all scales, because they're now incentivized to do so. They're also incentivized to capture and deploy energy from the ground up, from first principles upwards, to fuel their own company. Anybody can now fuel their own company. Anybody can start a startup. You don't have to go find seed capital. Just grow your own energy, basically. And then if you want to, you can take a loan out of more energy and add that energy to your technology that is expanding the civilization. So again, if the upper bounds of civilization, if the upper bounds of the economy are directly tied to energy, Kardashev economics is the best incentive structure to make sure energy keeps expanding rapidly. The civilization, the economy that adopts this framework, this style of living, will be the economy that exponentially grows the fastest, because the incentives are completely pure with growth. And that leads to far more economic prosperity, far more civilizational expansion, far more human flourishing. Everything just becomes better. Again, the current economy doubles about every 18 years. There's no reason it can't double every month, like Robin Hanson says, or even faster than that potentially, which again, that does scare some people. To some people, that sounds terrifying, but what does that actually mean? Why is that terrifying? I don't think it should be, actually, because all that really means is we now have enough resources to colonize the cosmos. That is the only thing that really matters, because if we don't colonize the cosmos over a long enough time horizon, it is guaranteed that we go extinct. And colonizing more and more planets decreases the probability of consciousness ceasing to exist in the universe, and it increases the probability of the light cone having the greatest future potential possible. So it's actually a necessary good to ascend the Kardashev scale, to have Kardashev economics, or to use kilowatt hours as the fundamental unit of economics, or in our case, we'll use USX. So we just talked about a few fundamental things. We talked about thermodynamics, we talked about evolutionary biology, we talked about the 4 fundamental inputs that lead to the outputs of a prosperous civilization, and we talked about an economic framework that can be applied there. Now we need to talk about how can we use this economic framework to actually increase the prosperity for everybody. This brings us to decentralized computing infrastructure. And there's a very specific reason as to why this is so important. If you look at OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, any of the frontier model companies, they are building these super intelligent AI models. And normal people like us, will get access to very powerful models. They'll probably be more powerful than any individual human, maybe more powerful than a couple humans combined. But as soon as we have models that are just above AGI, maybe they're approaching ASI, these companies no longer have incentives to give more models to us. They'll give more models to the companies that are powering the economy. They'll give more models to the people that are helping them build better models. Everybody within their circle will have ASI level models. But there is no incentive for them to give the everyday user better and better and better models. Actually, they have incentives to not do that, because if you had better and better and better models, it would give them more competition, which they do not want. Game theory says they're going to keep you with sufficiently good models. It'll be an AGI level model, which might make some people happy. And then for other people, whenever they realize that these people are basically gods now because they have super intelligent models that are giving them these like incredible, like unfathomable levels of capabilities, there will be people that are like, what the hell? These people are like gods compared to me. Even though your prosperity has increased drastically, there will still be people that are that own entire solar systems compared to you. So the important thing to take away from this is, due to limitations in resources, the models that you will have access to will only be so powerful if you're using frontier models. But if you're using open source models instead of proprietary models, you can have access to open source to super intelligence one day. As long as open source continues to exist, you probably will be able to have access to an open source model that is super intelligent. The problem is, it takes a lot of computational power to run a model that big. Even if we have drastically better computers, the models will get better and better, and now you'll be on another hierarchical scale of how expensive is the compute to run these super intelligent models. This is why decentralized computing structure is so important. If we can create a decentralized supercluster where you can connect localized GPUs, because I think in the future everybody's going to have their own AI hardware. Every single person watching this video will have their own AI hardware. And if we can make a cloud supercluster by networking all of those GPUs together, decentralized across the entire planet, now anybody can run super powerful open source models, not just Anthropic, not just OpenAI, not just Google, but you can too. The reason this is so important is because going back to, again, the first slide where we talked about evolutionary biology, intelligence is an evolved mechanism that allows the species with the most amount of intelligence to maximize energy efficiency and effectiveness on all scales the best. Therefore, the species that can do that is a greater level of intelligence and has the greatest probability of survival. I do think the people who just have access to normal AGI or something that is like approaching ASI, but isn't as the God model that these people are building, I do think those people will still have very good lives, to say the least. But the prosperity differences between you and those people will be drastic. Those people could own entire solar systems potentially one day, as crazy as that might sound. And then there will be everybody else who just has like normal stuff that seems fantastic today, but relative to the paradigm that we live in the future, it'll seem like garbage. It's kind of like going to Homo habilis and showing it your life today that you might think you aren't satisfied with, but Homo habilis would think you're a god. And then you look at these guys with super intelligent models and they look like gods. And you today would look at your position in the near future and say, wow, I can't believe I'm that successful. But then after you adjust for the success that you have, for the paradigm that you live in, and then you see these other people, you're going to be like, oh, okay, I need more. This is just biology. Again, that's why we are approaching this from a biological and physics standpoint, because as long as those things continue to be true, the things that we're saying in these presentations will likely be completely accurate. So this is why decentralized computing infrastructure and open source models are very, very, very important. You cannot be bullish enough on this because it is the best thing for you as an individual. Next is open sourced AI and robotics. After we have the energy technology, after we have the aligned incentives for the best growth of civilization, and after we have enough compute via the distributed decentralized computing infrastructure, running open source models on that will be obviously very, very important, and having robotics will obviously be very, very important as well. Having these two things will give you or your community or whatever economy or ecosystem you're building the leverage to do whatever you want to. Any problem that you want to solve, any technology you want to build, anything you want to do. If you want to go colonize certain places within the realm of the Earth or on the moon or maybe on Mars one day, that will be physically possible in the future. So again, what we're doing here is starting from the very first principles of thermodynamics, evolutionary biology, then aligning the economic incentives with energy and blockchain technology. That's the best use of cryptocurrency I could ever think of. Then we're aligning what can we use these incentives for? Well, we're going to need compute. I think compute's going to be the second most valuable resource on the planet besides energy and certain materials. And then next will be the open source models. That's kind of like the cherry. And then above that will be robotics. And that's the ultimate cherry on top. For your community, your network state, your economy, your ecosystem, to solve any problem you want to build the fastest growing civilization possible from the first principles upwards by aligning incentives of your civilization. So the most important part is the community. As I've been saying, community, ecosystem, economy. You cannot have an economy. You cannot do these things without a proper community, which is why I am building a community. And if you're not building a community and you want to join a community, you can join mine. Or if you don't want to join my community, you can join any other community. But it's very important that you do join a community that aligns incentives with the future roles of the game. because you want to have your incentives aligned with maximal growth to ensure your probability of being in the best position possible in the future and ensure that you have access to the most powerful technologies in the future, because whoever has access to those technologies will be able to maximize energy efficiency and effectiveness on all scales the best, leading to the highest level of evolution as a species. So, we've just covered 3 fundamental data points: thermodynamics and evolutionary biology, the 4 fundamental inputs that a sieve emerges from, and the secondary and tertiary consequences of artificial intelligence on the economy. Again, the only thing that's missing now is the community. This brings me to the concept of the network state. As I mentioned in the beginning of this video, some of these ideas were inspired from Balaji, who is the creator of the network state. You can look up this book at thenetworkstate.com. It's free. Check it out. In short, what this is a group of people who come together in pursuit of a common goal, forming their own startup society and economy. An example of this would be Brian Johnson with Don't Die, right? I'm building one of these societies called the United States of Acceleration. And the reason why is because we believe in American values, and we believe that we need to accelerate much faster if we want to beat people like China, if we want to make sure that everybody in the community gets access to the most powerful technologies in the future, if we want to ensure economic prosperity for everybody in the United States of Acceleration, or USX for short. We need to align with these incentives. We need more members to join the community so that we can build this future, because it actually is very important. As you can see, having decentralized computing nodes, having open sourced AI that we can run on those nodes, and then within the community, having quadratic polling systems that we can use to allocate our intelligence to any problem we want to solve as a community is very important. And number one, and probably the most important thing, is we need to colonize space. America needs to colonize space before China does. If China gets to the moon before America and colonizes it, or Mars before America and colonizes it, that's basically encumbering our trajectory, playing higher dimensional chess to prevent us to be able to expand where we want to. That would be the goal of China. I don't think they will actually be able to stop us from that, especially if we align with these incentives and continue to accelerate. But this is why it's very important for us to accelerate. It's very important for us to keep going forward so we don't end up in the CCP. Again, the goal here is to build a community. If you're interested in any of the things that I just said, you can join the community. There is either a link or a button below this video where you can click it and join the community that we are building. It should be extremely cheap, just like $7 per month. The only reason we have a paywall is just so we can keep in interested people and keep out people who are curious but not committed. We want people to be committed, right? So you can join the community below. The reason why we call it the United States of Acceleration is due to the distilled information. This is a meme, or not fully a meme, but we use memetics as leverage to distribute the message of this community very quickly. The memification is very intentional because the memetics are basically just packaged distilled information that allows for extremely fast velocities of distribution. Like USX is a play off of US dollars and USA. USX will be our cryptocurrency. It'll be our currency of tokenizing energy and having it on the blockchain so that we can barter and trade it and use it to power our compute, power our models, power our robotics, power our technology. And the memetics of this entire movement are very good because the United States of Acceleration movement is already kind of something that is picking up. Even apart from our community, we can get a lot of people in the community and really start to accelerate these timelines, really start to work on building this economy and make sure that our incentives as a community are fundamentally aligned with where the future is going to be, rather than just sitting in our hands and saying, whoop-de-doo, I don't know what it's going to look like. I just kind of I'm, again, not trying to predict the future here. I think this is the least wrong thing. Just a very short recap of the United States of Acceleration. Our goal is to have the highest levels of prosperity for all of our members, and the best way to ensure that is to make sure that we all align with the fundamental principles that incentivize the greatest amount of growth. We want to align with the rules of the game. The game is changing. We just figured out what those rules are likely to be. We should start to think about these things strongly and begin to align with these things today so that we can have very good positions in the future. Again, the United States of Acceleration is a community that you can join right now. There should be a button or link below this if you are interested. And the goal is, again, for everybody to have the greatest potential in the future by maximizing the probability that you and everybody in the community gets access to the best technologies so that we can ensure that we can maximize energy efficiency and effectiveness on all scales the best, and be in the best position possible in the future. That way we don't have to look at Sam Altman or Elon or Sundar or Dario Amodei and be like, holy cow, these guys own these super intelligent machines and we just have normal AGI because they don't have any incentives to give us more powerful AI than that. What are we going to do? Instead of saying, oh, I'm just going to sit on my hands today and wait and see how it plays out, I'm trying to take accountability for my actions early, see these patterns coming early, notice what is happening early enough for me to actually do something about it today instead of sitting here and then complaining that I didn't take action whenever that time comes. We can look at the paradigms that are approaching by looking at biology, looking at evolutionary biology, evolutionary psychology, looking at physics and just how the games are played. Like there is solid game theory, solid rules of how things are played. If you use the fundamental guiding principles and extrapolate forward, you can have a reasonable framework as to what things could possibly look like. It won't be perfectly accurate, obviously, which is why we're not trying to predict everything about the future. We're just trying to be directionally correct and build the strongest foundation possible. So if that's what you want to do, if you want to maximize for the strongest foundation possible for yourself and the community, join the community, and we can make sure we all have the greatest levels of prosperity in the future, and those who contribute to the community will be rewarded strongly.